She was so beautiful, even the heavens grew envious, and the gods descended into obsession. They said no one could gaze at Medusa for too long, not out of fear, but fascination. Her long hair, her piercing eyes, her golden skin, she enchanted even the most brutal of creatures. But her beauty was not a blessing. It was a curse. When the god of the seas, Poseidon, laid eyes on her, he desired her with divine fury. And within Athena's sacred temple, he took her by force. Medusa's screams echoed through the marble columns, but the gods are deaf when the victim is mortal. And Athena, goddess of reason and war, does not forgive desecration even when the one who bleeds is blameless. The punishment was cruel. Not upon the assailant, but upon the assaulted. Medusa was cursed. Her hair, once a symbol of beauty, became a nest of living serpents. Her skin, once radiant, turned scaly, almost stone-like. And her gaze gained the gift of petrification. Anyone who dared look into her eyes would turn to stone, frozen in time, in their final moment of terror. Cast out from the world of mortals, condemned to wander forgotten ruins, Medusa became what all feared, a monster. But she was not born so. She was made. Forged in pain, shaped by abandonment, and consecrated as a symbol of feminine fear. For centuries, humanity told her tale through the eyes of heroes, gods, and conquerors. But perhaps the time has come to hear the voice of the silenced creature. To look at Medusa not with revulsion, but with empathy. Because her curse is more than mere magic, it is metaphor. Her petrifying gaze does not symbolize hatred, but silenced pain. The terror we feel before what we do not understand, or before the truth we wish to bury. Today, you will discover the true story of the Gorgons. And perhaps, by the end, you will realize, the monster was never her. But Medusa was not alone. She was part of an ancient trio, feared even by the gods, the Gorgons. 3 sisters born of primordial chaos. Daughters of night and sea. Stheno, the mighty. Uriel, the shrieker. And Medusa, the beautiful. They lived beyond the known world, in a place forgotten by mortals. A desert of eternal stone, where the wind whispers laments. And eyes once opened, never close again. There, among shadows and statues that were once flesh, they waited, watched, endured. Stheno and Uriel were immortal, untouchable. But Medusa was not. She alone could bleed. She alone could die. That is why she was the target. Why legend chose her as the sacrifice. And why it is her name and hers alone that history remembered. Medusa, the mortal Gorgon. The one whose gaze pierces the soul and turns the heart to stone. But did she want to be a monster? Or was she forced to become one? Before the serpents. Before the curse. Before the terror etched in stone. Medusa was simply a woman. They say her beauty was as rare as the silence of the gods. A priestess in Athena's temple, she had sworn eternal chastity. She served the goddess with devotion, guarding the sacred as one guards their own heart. She was respected, admired, and by some, desired. But on Olympus, beauty is a threat. And in a world shaped by gods, desire is a weapon. Poseidon, lord of the seas, saw her. And like a wave that asks no permission, he crashed into the temple and took her. There, among columns meant to protect her. There, where she prayed for peace. And Athena, she who was meant to protect women, turned her face away. Worse still, she punished Medusa, as though she were guilty of her own suffering. She transformed her body, condemned her soul, made her a warning, a punishment carved into living flesh. Thus, the monster was born, not from darkness, but from injustice. There was no compassion, no comfort. Athena's punishment struck like lightning, cold, divine, merciless. Medusa felt the change as one feels death, while still alive. Her hair, once a source of pride, writhed in agony. Serpents emerged where silk had once flowed. They hissed, screamed, wept with her. Her eyes, once gentle, became a curse. Not by choice, but by decree. From that day on, anyone who looked at her froze, turned to stone, their final expression preserved. Fear, guilt, admiration, all petrified. The world called her a monster, but the real monster was invisible. It was the silence of the gods. It was the absence of justice. Exiled, hunted, Medusa wandered through forgotten lands, surrounded by statues that had once been men, invaders, warriors, the curious, all punished by a gaze she never asked for. And there, in the solitude of her new body, she learned to survive, not as a woman, but as a threat. The gods, uneasy, watched from above. Medusa's name swept through the realms of men like wind. Her gaze, a living weapon. Her body, a threat that needed to be silenced. And so, Perseus emerged, son of Zeus, raised to fulfill fates written by others, sent by a cowardly king, who wished for his end, but disguised it as a quest for glory. "Bring me the Gorgon's head," he said, as if asking for a trophy, as if she were a prize, or a monster from legend, not a wounded soul. But Perseus did not go alone. Athena, the very goddess who cursed Medusa, gave him a shield, polished like a mirror, so he would never need to look into her eyes, because even the gods fear what they create. Hermes gave him a sword and winged sandals, and invisible, flying above the desert of stone, he found Medusa sleeping. Yes, sleeping. She did not fight. She did not strike. She simply rested as one who carries too much weight. And then, without warning, without honor, without a duel, Perseus beheaded her. With a single blow, he severed her head, and with it, her story. But the legend was far from over. From the blood that poured from Medusa's neck, two impossible beings were born: Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chryse, the golden warrior, children of Poseidon, born not of love, but of pain, of the violence that transformed her, of the blade that silenced her. Even in death, Medusa still gave life. Even decapitated, her power remained. Her head, carried by Perseus, still turned all who met its gaze to stone. She had become a weapon, a relic of destruction, a tool in the hands of heroes and gods, the very same who allowed her downfall. Perseus used her head to defeat enemies, rescue princesses, and become legend. But in the end, it was Athena who claimed what was left. She embedded Medusa's image into her shield, not as tribute, but as a symbol of power, a warning. The Gorgon became an icon. The Gorgonian, her petrified face, came to adorn temples, shields, and armor. It was used to ward off evil, with the face of one the world had judged as evil. The truth: they didn't slay a monster, they stole her power. And even in death, Medusa remained untamed. They say Medusa was a monster. But what is a monster? One who destroys with their hands, or one who turns away from another's pain? Medusa wasn't born dark. She was shaped that way. By violence, by silence, by unjust punishment. She was a priestess, a victim, a survivor. And in the end, a symbol of silenced fury, of punished beauty, of the woman who, even in death, still haunts the gods. Perhaps the true horror of her story is not the gaze that petrifies, but the world that forced her to shut her eyes. And if this story touched you, made you see the other side of the myth, then you're ready. Ready to uncover how many other truths lie hidden behind the shadows of legend. Forgotten stories, silenced voices, buried truths. And they're still out there, waiting to be heard. If this story awakened something in you, imagine how many others are still waiting to be told. Forgotten stories, hidden legends, truths never spoken. Follow this dark path with us. Discover what the gods never wanted you to know. Subscribe and keep exploring the myths through the eyes of those who dare to see beyond the legend.